So negative gearing. So it's talked about a lot. Just very quickly again, negative gearing is you buy. Well, it's usually a property, but it could be a portfolio of shares, for example. It could be a whole bunch of artworks. You use some debt to buy this asset, which you treat as an investment. And under Australian law, and it's been like this for about 90 years, if the costs of owning the asset, that is the cost of the debt, and in a property's case, the land tax and the council rates and the maintenance and all the other costs that you might have to own a property, if those costs are higher than the rent or the income you receive from the property, under Australian law, you can deduct that loss off your other income. So you would get a tax deduction against your salary, for example. Now, to me, this is not controversial at all. It just says, I make my money doing all these things, renting property, working, maybe something else. And if I make a loss here, I can offset it against income there. And by the way, that's what companies do. Companies often have divisions, some of which are profitable and some of which are not, and they can add it all together. So take the Nine Group, which we're a part of. Nine has free-to-air TV, it has Stan, it has newspapers like The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. It has us, we're the shining jewel of the Nine Crown. We're the most popular part of Nine. Well, not really, but the point is we don't all make money at the same time, but Nine gets to combine the profits and losses and just pay tax on the total amount. And that's sort of the way negative gearing works. Now, opponents of negative gearing say, it pushes up property prices too high, it keeps young people out of homes. I think that's rubbish, I do. Negative gearing's been around for a long time, and it's only recently that property prices have gone up a lot. I think, to me, it's a lot more about rising population. The more people you stuff into a city like Melbourne and you don't build more accommodation for them, whether they rent it or buy it, you have to, under the basic laws of supply and demand, push up the price of the established or the existing properties. Our next guest is a third-generation property developer. He's a former lecturer at the University of New South Wales. He's been doing this for over 40 years. Steve Chandler, good morning.
Morning, Tom.
Well, I mean, the federal government's being a bit cagey about this. They're sort of saying, the bureaucrats have just gone off and they're doing some sort of an analysis on negative gearing and capital gains tax and who knows what might happen. But it's clear that they want to do something, whether it's before the next election or after, I don't know. Let's say we did fiddle with negative gearing and or capital gains tax. Would that have a material difference on property prices?
Oh, massive, absolutely massive. There's a couple of things that you've got to contemplate there, and your earlier discussion on this topic really hit it. We as developers, if you think of the industry where supply and demand is the driver of everything in our society, there's got to be demand for property for a developer to want to develop property, create more housing. Now, we've got plenty of that at the moment. It's expensive, so it's very difficult for us to create property. If they go and start mucking around with negative gearing, what it's going to do, people are going to stop buying properties as investments. And that means no more demand for the creation of property other than from rental. But then your rental market gets stifled because there's no product in it. Because, as a sort of average sort of rule of thumb, 50% of what we develop is rental property for investors. Now, you muck around with that formula and, most of your mums and dads out there who, struggle to, earn a wage and then, let's buy an investment property and pay it off for retirement. If you make it harder for them to, have that investment property for their retirement, they don't have that, well, they're just going to become a burden on the public purse as well.
And what you're saying is if you fiddle with the rules and the investors that you build for say, well, we're not going to invest anymore, then you don't build those housing projects, do you?
Exactly. So housing supply drops and makes it even worse than what we've got now.
So, all right. So why is the government doing this? I mean, Bill Shorten lost an election 5 and a bit years ago, which probably most people thought he wasn't going to lose, but he did, promising pretty much the same package of things, that he'd fiddle with negative gearing and fiddle with the capital gains tax, and he lost to Scott Morrison. Why just 5 years later would Anthony Albanese contemplate doing a similar thing?
I think it's a brain snap, personally. It makes no sense. So they're probably looking at it saying, if we didn't have all this negative gearing, we're going to pick up, I don't know, $5-10 billion worth of additional tax revenue. Well, the reality is, they might pick up that 5 or 10 billion in tax revenue, but the damage they're going to cause long term is going to be tenfold that. I think they're looking at short term sort of income for the government, tax income, and not strategically thinking into the future. Imagine, look at what they're doing. They're saying, we want, 1 million homes in 5 years, and, nothing's happening where that's concerned. How do they expect to, generate housing when they're talking about stifling it? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
I agree, you're right. The federal government wants to build 1.2 million homes in just 5 years. The state government's got 800,000 homes in 10 years, and I assume the two targets are combined, although you never know. And as you say, if you dissuade people who invest in property from doing that, your chance of building those homes, well, as it is, they're probably not going to make those targets. They almost certainly won't. Thank you, Steve. Steve Chandler there, third-generation property developer and former lecturer at the University of New South Wales.